And then to continue the cause for the communitarians, we now welcome Mr. Ernst van Staden.
All right, thank you, Daniel. I'm assuming my time starts now. So it was Edmund Burke that said, "You will smile here at the consistency of those democratists who, when they are not on their guard, treat the humbler part of the community with the greatest contempt, while at the same time they pretend to make them the dispositories of all power." What communitarianism advocates is more communal autonomy and less government interference and social engineering. Wendell Berry notes how a community is built on a rich collection of personal relationships that draw from a reservoir of common memory and tradition. Communitarianism is based on the idea that not only do you want such aspects respected in regards to your own culture, but that you also grant that to other cultures as well. It has a foundation of mutual recognition and respect, very important, as well as an anti-imperialist DNA. Communitarianism is not an ideology, but rather a plea for the recognition of reality. A society of communities managing themselves is much more free and stable political environment than a society of individuals managed by one enlightened central state, acting as the babysitter, judge, jury, and executioner. Because rights are secured by the cultural arrangements that constitute non-state power, self-determining groups, not the state, secure individual rights in practice. When communities are allowed more power to take their destiny, safety, and governance into their own hands, you create a necessary mechanism for relieving societal tensions. There is significantly more potential for friction and conflict in a society of communities forcefully pulled together under the rule of one majority government, which tries to micromanage all these affairs as a collection of individuals, than a society of largely self-determining communities. Communities are then forced to attempt to determine their destiny and their safety through only one avenue, democratic party politics, which creates a serious conundrum for minority groups, as we've seen ample examples of in South Africa. Individual rights are therefore insufficient to protect minorities against the tyranny of the majority in such a system. Individualists argue that a holistic state and its mechanisms such as the courts, South African human rights system, for example, and public protector will serve as the great equalizers between communities and cultures. But as we've seen throughout history and in the present, all it takes is one ideologically possessed administration to capture these institutions and use them to oppress not only individuals, but also minority groups. And because these communities have become reliant on the state to manage their destinies and their safety, they are powerless to fight an administration which diverges from the liberal ideals that created it. For example, they have been forced to rely on the state to manage their safety in regards to, for example, the police. And as we saw the consequences of that in South Africa during the lockdown, when the state prohibited neighborhood watches, or under Mbeki, when he dismantled the commando system, placing security and safety of communities primarily in the hands of the state, in the name of a government managing a society of individuals. In the pursuit of state-managed intergroup harmony, the inevitable logical endgame of liberalism was always going to be an increasingly detailed, authoritarian, and explicit state bureaucracy and legislation in order to manage all the different groups in a society as a collection of individuals. The main obstacles standing between liberals and the individualist utopia are the pesky cleavages and borders of culture, language, and religion. And the only way to overcome this, it seems, is therefore to slowly chip away at these cleavages and move towards a holistic society of individuals rather than communities. And there seems to be no way of achieving this through other means than a benevolent technocratic state. At the core of liberalism is the concern that the state could oppress the individual. But ironically, in order to protect the individual, the liberal state increasingly imposes an atomistic lifestyle on communities and cultures. The previous century is often characterized as showing us the evils of forced separation through state coercion. But I contend that the post-Berlin Wall era could easily show us the evils of forced integration of communities into an atomized, formless whole. Where the classical liberalism of the Enlightenment was a reaction to the authoritarian oppression of the individual, I see the resurgence in communitarian and conservative thinking in our time as a reaction to the excessive and often imperialist individualism. People want politics to be about greater things, about morality and civil society. And when liberals and progressives failed to satiate these longings with their technocratic and sterile view of politics, populists who gladly rushed in where liberals feared to tread filled that void. In many cases, these populists then incrementally started perverting the liberal institutions and interpreted constitutions as they wished, ushering in a tyranny of the majority, using the tools and power that liberalism provided. For the vast majority of human history, culture and tradition managed and maintained everything the contemporary holistic liberal state, which manages society as a whole instead of recognizing its various parts, attempts to control. Tradition is a set of solutions for which we have forgotten the problems, as Donald Kingbury said. And if you discard these solutions in the name of a new, enlightened, individualist way of thinking, do not be surprised as some of the problems return and are as powerful as ever.